Okay, so welcome to our caucus of October 17th. With us today, we have both Chief Carroll and Chief Judge. And this caucus, or most of it, I guess, will be dedicated to I think it's Nlyten Corporation to provide the city's fire department with a first responder mental health and wellness mobile application. So with that said, Chief, you have the floor.
So just to clarify, this mobile health app is not just for the fire department, it's for both police and fire department. That's what the RFP went out for. This is an RFP that we've been working on since about February. We started this conversation probably last year, end of last year, regarding a mobile health app for our employees, both in police and fire, with the potential to maybe, if it worked, to go and use it citywide as well, but identified police and fire as possibly needing this, and that's when we started last year looking at a bunch of different mobile apps. There were some that fell under the bidding threshold, but we thought it'd be best to put it out for an RFP and look at all the different solutions that were out there. I think we ended up having about 12 people that solicited for this. Some were not in alignment with the RFP. It was that they were going to come in and develop a whole new system for us, and the pricing on that was skyrocketed to over $100 grand in some of the RFPs. But this was designed to look for a solution for our first responders who are exposed to crisis on a regular basis, and a lot of times that's a cumulative type of exposure that happens over years of service. It could sometimes be one event as a triggering event, but we know that looking at the data out there, both on the police and fire side, and I'll let Chief Carroll talk to the police side, that our responders are about twice as likely to have suicide than the average population. So we looked at that. We looked at some different solutions that are out there. We had engaged on the fire department side. The union had an IAFF program sometime, I believe it was last year or earlier this year, for peer support personnel. We supported that, provided the union time off, thought that that was a good starting point as well, but that's not the whole solution when you talk about firefighter mental health and police mental health. That's an aspect of that.
Do you mind going into a little bit more with that program? I'm just wondering how that works with the peer support program.
Yeah, so the peer support program, the International Association of Firefighters, I think it was a 24 or 32-hour program that the union selected several members to go to. I think it was held at Hazelton's fire department. It was held in the area. They brought in some people that trained them, and it's about outreach and firefighters having a level of comfortability with reaching out if they do have problems, and then those peer people would be able to put them and point them in the right direction, and it would be somebody they can confide in. So they went through that. They also engaged, the union engaged a mental health professional that we allowed to ride along on all 3 shifts, just so she could see the extent of the work and what they're exposed to on a regular basis. But like I said, that's really one part of the mental health approach, right? Usually when they start engaging a peer support personnel, there's been a significant traumatizing incident that now they've been triggered, maybe excessive alcohol use or depression. The mobile health app looks for a couple of the different things, the ones that we looked for. One of them is anonymity. Even though these firefighters can reach out to other peer firefighters, it's still that same group. And what the research ends up flushing out is one of the biggest impediments to reaching out in our profession for help is you don't want to be exposed as being weak. So that anonymity plays a big role in it. And this mobile health app is anonymous. It puts them with other peer people. It gives them training that they can look at. And from our perspective here, half of our department has less than 8 years on. They're the younger generations coming in. A lot of them, a health app like this or a mobile health type of solution that we put out for, they're more apt to use that and engage in that. So for the we looked at all the pricing, we narrowed it down to 3 vendors. We met with all 3 vendors after we looked at the proposals, and we selected, based on the scoring through the RFP, we selected a provider that's kind of renowned in this environment. They were one of the 2% finalists in a competition or a competitive process with the Veterans Administration to develop this app. And then they tailored it to the fire side and to the police side. So there's 2 separate, depending on what bucket you're in, that we're able to tailor those things towards firefighters and police officers.
So you won't be able to see who's utilizing it, but will you be able to track how many personnel are using it? Because I
Yes.
think there were concerns about how much it would be used or not, and if the money would go to waste.
Yeah, so that was one of our concerns as well. We wanted to make sure that if we put this out there, that it was going to be used by our personnel. But I'm going to be honest with you. Anything we could do for mental health for our responders is important. You're twice as likely to die from suicide as a firefighter than you are in the line of duty in the nation. So this is something, I'm more worried about the mental health app, our mental health of our firefighters. I have text messages from one of our firefighters from years ago that I still keep on my phone to this day. He committed suicide, all right? He died by suicide. That serves as a reminder to me that our mental health of our responders who see people at their worst, and that's really got to be our charge, to make sure that we're doing anything we can. The peer support teams is a great start. That's why we supported it, allowed them to go down on city time using union time. We allowed their selected therapists to come, watch, see what we do. Anything we can do to strengthen them or get them right before they go too far off the rails is important. And this program really looks to do that. It's not just, it's wellness, it's sleep rhythms, it's different training. It's a lot of stuff packaged into one application that's tailored to police and fire. And I think it's very important that we provide this level of service to, the people that are out there, protecting us on a daily basis.
So you're not looking to replace that other program with this app? This is just going to be in conjunction with it, another option for personnel to be able to use?
Yeah, so the peer support teams are really designed more so when there's some type of critical event. They are used when somebody's having problems. If they feel that they can reach out, they do. But this also serves as maybe somebody's just struggling at home, maybe getting depressed, maybe alcohol usage. I mean, this is going to start to, and it will also connect them with local resources as well. And it should be noted that the vendor we ended up selecting at the end of the day is on Lackawanna Avenue. Somebody who's designed apps before. They're right here in the city. They'll work with us. Wilkes-Barre, I believe, is already using this, at least for the police, and I think for police and fire. Wilkes-Barre has already signed on with this program for their first responders. So this is something I think that it's critically important for our responders.
Now, you said you had 12 initial applicants to the RFP, and then you narrowed it down to about 3. Were all 3 of those, were they local companies?
They were not. No.
Okay, this so happened to be the only local company?
No, there was the Guide app, which is the one that Councilman McAndrew, there was Lexipol, and a company called Triage were the 3 that we ended up looking at a little bit more in depth. And Lexipol was about twice as much as the Guide app, or Nlyten. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. And Triage was about $15,000, but it also had additional training costs, which would have put it probably over. So of the 3 we looked at, we probably selected the cheapest vendor as well.
And how did you decide that you had a need for an app specifically?
I had been reached out to I get solicitation as the fire chief a lot of times. I've been out to some other conferences as well, and I believe this one was brought to us by, it might have been the public health director at the time. She had forwarded the information along and we started to look at it. But I had looked at a couple others. I'm still getting solicitation from other health apps that are out there, but the RFP was already closed. So more than 13 that we initially got.
So the peer support program initially, or as it stands now, is at no cost to the city. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's at no cost to the city.
And with regards to the app, so who's at the other end of the app? I know they tried something like this or tossing around something like this with the school district. And their concerns are my concerns too, that who is someone certified at the other end of the app? How this app is activated, and when this person reaches out through this app, who's at the other end? Who are the resources? Are they local resources? Are they people that are certified in the areas that they need to be to provide, the support or the therapy per se for the person that initiates it?
So there's a couple answers to that question. So the first is going to be, yes, there are local resources and they will add additional local resources if the city HR department identifies specific resources that we want to have on there. So they could select that. There's also training that's already on there. It's already developed training. They could sit through breathing classes. They could sit through stress management classes, little hits of training just to keep them on track. And there's also a peer support network that's on there that connects them with other people that are on that app, but it's an anonymous app. And that's, if you look at a lot of the research that's out there, and I'll mention one of them, the Ruderman Family Foundation, they did a white paper on mental health and suicide of first responders in 2018. And one of the biggest impediments to getting people into the system and getting them help is there's a stigma that goes with that in our profession. We're trying to eliminate that stigma, but it's tough to do. That's always been hey, just work through it type of atmosphere that was provided in the fire stations. The peer support is a great starting point, but it doesn't do everything that the app does. This is another avenue to get our people into the system or get them the help that they're looking for. Some are just going to be not going to want to reach out to peer support people. I know that we have bargaining units here in the city, but not every member is a member of that bargaining unit either. Under the Janus ruling, they don't have to be a member of the bargaining unit.
So I think what your answer is to the question I asked is, it just directs them to resources. There's no one at the other end as some type of therapist. It's called the therapy. So it just directs them to other areas that, whether peer support, which they already have, or it could be localized resources. Is that what the app does? Like, I need to wrap my head around what the app does.
There's a lot of it, if I may.
Well, just give me a couple examples.
I'm very fortunate to have the experience of the military and my experience with the VA, getting my Marines and my sailors the help that they need before they hit a crisis. This is all about education. So there are components to this that are applications for learning. There are applications for bringing yourself down to basically, you're going to de-escalate your own emotions, your anxieties. There are resources. It's not like you click on this app and you're speaking to a psychologist. It doesn't work that way. This is not a mandate. This is part of a broader education for our officers and our firemen, that they know mental health is part of the holistic approach. Our officers need to be mentally, physically, emotionally sound to be making good, sound decisions on the street. We talked about the cumulative stress, the impact of stress, and the impact of witnessing trauma, which is what we see a lot on a daily basis. We ask a lot of our officers, and where I see this and why I support this is I want this education piece. I want them to have the resources where they can study and they can learn. And if you put it even something as simple as in between calls, where they can go behind a shopping center and they can pull out this app and do breathing exercises to bring their heart rate down, to lower their emotional threshold before they go on to their next call. It happens. And we need to prepare them so that when they see the signs, that might be impacting their health, or it might be impacting their family or their work performance. We want them to know that they have a resource, but we don't want them to give up their ego. That is the biggest factor that holds back our Marines and sailors, law enforcement, and firefighters. The military had led the way in this, and we're starting now to recognize that PTSD is real in the emergency services. And this is one more piece on top of all the other pieces that we have to support our officers that I think was missing. And I really think it's a bonus to have in our capabilities.
Okay, so I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. So, of course, I support the health and welfare of our very brave and first responders. But I'm trying to understand, is this like a self-directive or a self-directed educational app? But I know you said there's breathing exercises. I just want to know what does it provide that's not always already provided or could be provided without spending this kind of money? And I know this is a supplemental piece, and I get that and understand that. I know there's a peer program already in place that's very successful from what I hear, and that's wonderful. But I'm not understanding what this app actually does. Am I going to pull over and then go through a self-directed training? Outside of the breathing thing, I get that maybe to de-escalate yourself, but education on what? And
You may. There's also, it's peer support. You could talk to someone else who shares your experience, another peer that is anonymous. There are links. If you are in crisis, you can call a crisis hotline. There's a lot that it's capable of doing. So I'm kind of missing, there's the crisis part where you can get on a line and you could talk to somebody if you need the help. And then there is your self-help apps where you're able to work yourself. If this app doesn't exist, and we're not promoting this app as a way to say, we understand that you will go through this, it is normal, and we're here for you. Here's how you get help. If we don't do that, they remain alienated, and if we're going to have them, look up a number on Google to call for a mental health crisis center, I think that's wrong. There's a lot more to this beyond, it's about them knowing we have their backs in this.
So this contract is for a year, since then it could be renewed. Wondering if, how you're going to understand the effectiveness of it by the end of the year, if it was passed, to determine if you would need to extend it.
I think how we're going to look at the effectiveness of it, we're never going to know if it prevents anything, right? But we could look at the utilization at least. Our members who are logging in, it's an anonymous login, but they know that they're associated with the city, but it doesn't have their name associated with all that's PI is protected, so that personal information is not going to the city, but we could see what the app's utilization is. Listen, and that was one of our concerns as well. Do we want to get in a 3-year contract? Well, their contract is, it's good for a year, 60-day notice to terminate. Well, if nobody's using it, maybe nobody was in crisis, or maybe it's not trusted yet. So part of our job here, and this is something myself and the chief talked about, is really rolling this out to the membership and letting them know there's resources on here, fiscal health and well-being, because we know all the different things that lead to depression. And that's what all these on the app, the training, the peer support, and I get, Councilman, that there's peer support in place. I would question how successful it is because it hasn't been in place that long. But, and one of the impediments to it, everything that we talk about in the fire and police services, they don't want anybody to know. So yeah, it's going to be someone that you're working right next to that you might talk to, and some may feel comfortable to do that, others may not. So this app gives us the ability to go, here you go, here's the help, we'll push it out from our area, we'll talk about it, and having the resource right down the street to help us roll that out so that our members stay healthy. And listen, I got to tell you, I got to be completely honest with you. One of the things that we do around this city is we pick up pennies and step over dollars all the time. You prevent one line of duty or somebody that has to go off on long-term sick or injured, this app pays for itself for years. For years. It's $18,000. You put a firefighter or a police officer out for a year because of mental health issues that we didn't address or see early. That's the other thing with this app, is maybe you're just going in there and doing breathing exercises, but maybe our officers and police officers are going, well, these are some of the signs and symptoms that I should be looking for in my own membership. And then maybe they can intervene early. And if we prevent that, you know, the savings to the city, I hate to talk about the savings because it's really about their mental health. But let's be real here, right? You guys are responsible for a pretty significant budget here in the city. But one of our biggest costs, over 70% of the city's costs, are tied to personnel. Well over 70%. So if we're able to prevent somebody from being ill as a result of depression, anxiety, alcohol abuse, suicidal thoughts, this app should be a no-brainer. I got to be honest. I talked to Chief Carroll about this a little bit. I know that it was tabled last week because he had some questions. But my phone never rang. Everybody up there has my cell phone number. Call me. I'd be more than happy to take any time out of the day, especially when I hear that union officials are talking to certain council members and giving them information on what this app is about. They have no idea because we haven't rolled it out. We've been diligent about this program from the start. We wanted to be clear that it was going to be able to be used positively to impact our members. And we wanted to be very deliberate about how the RFP was written, how we evaluated the proposals, with the same caution that you guys have that, listen, at some point we have to evaluate, is this worth actually going down this road? So please, I encourage you, if you ever have any questions, please call me. I will do a meeting, I will do a Teams meeting, I will come for coffee, I will stay late at night, do it every day, and so does Chief Carroll. We're always available. Just call, and I can give you some of that information. But this is something that I think both myself and the chief are very passionate about. It's making sure that our members go home every day. I worry more about their mental health today than I do about their abilities to go in and save somebody in a burning building. And that's where I'm supposed to be right now, watching 4 of my members in Lehigh Valley be recognized tonight. But I had to come here and explain this, which I'll never have a problem coming in front of council. But I think this could have been handled with a phone call.
So to answer that, I know in the CBA, when the contract was being negotiated, mental health was something that was a point of contention. So when I saw this come across our agenda, I thought the fire department and possibly the police department were going to get a piece that they didn't get with the contract. So when that happened, I said, hey, look, you guys got that piece that you needed. And it came back to me, no, this isn't the piece that we needed. But that's how the phone call came to me rather than you. It was something I had talked about for a while when it came to mental health. Does the police department have the same peer support team as the fire department does, or something similar?
Something similar we're getting off the ground right now. We're sending officers in the first quarter of the year to that training to assist in setting it up. We do have other outsources, trauma counselors, critical incident stress debriefings, and we have a lifeline with other agencies that do have peer support that would offer that up to us.
So that lifeline, I think, is a good thing to talk about. Does the city have an EAP program? Do we have an employee assistance program? The city as a whole, for any employee, a clerical worker, someone to call our HR department to put them with someone if they need mental health services or other.
Yeah, I know that we've had requests come in through my office and I refer it to HR and I never hear after that. So that'd be a question for HRs. But I'm glad you brought up the contract part of it. So yes, the mental health was passionate with the local when we were negotiating. And the city took steps to recognize that. And in negotiations, meetings with the union, Jessica Askra, and at the time, the business administrator, Larry West, said, yes, there's some validity with that. No co-pays for mental health visits. They looked at all that. They were good with it. But the union walked away, and our proposals had already been submitted, and they wanted to roll the dice with arbitration. So yes, the city was very aware of that, but let's be clear on the narrative. The city is concerned about the health and wellness of the members and was addressing that as changing that in the police healthcare, or excuse me, the fire healthcare language when we were discussing that. Right before they decided negotiations are done, we're going to roll the dice with arbitration. But the city, Larry West and Jessica Askra said, yeah, we'll eliminate the copay and the deductible for mental health and alcohol stuff. Yeah, so that was on the table.
So that puts us where we're at today. I mean, we went to arbitration and where we're at today. Could this money be better elsewhere to pay for some of those deductibles, things like that? Because the deductible becomes a barrier between the either firefighter or officer to get that mental health. Money can be a barrier.
That would be a question probably for the mayor and the business administrator, but I think at that point, Councilman, when we're talking about should we wait until they get to the point where we need to send them for critical treatment, or should we be addressing that before that happens? I would rather address that before it happens. So if the mental health app can do that, I think that that's beneficial. I mean, the copay for going to seek mental health is $25. Is that a barrier for firefighters that are making $77,000 a year at a base? I don't know. But I would say I think there's room for improvement everywhere, but I think it's not one solution. It's multiple things that need to happen. And I think that this fills a real needed gap, especially as we get newer employees who are more versed at this than me, you, and Chief Carroll. If this is something where they can get that help and our officers can get that knowledge on, hey, what should I be looking for? I think that that's a win for the city.
So now, having someone, I know they reached out and they got somebody that works with them through outpatient or some kind of like coordinator. Would it be more, and this is where I see it, would this money be more beneficial to, say, get an outpatient therapist or some kind of outpatient coordinator on a retainer so they could have that relationship with someone that they could call out to that person, actually have a human on the other line to get them the services they need?
This will connect them with a human as well. This will connect them with resources and local resources if we want to identify them. This will connect them with that person.
Is there a screening, say someone is having suicidal thoughts, and then they can be directed to more appropriate care because this app,
There's screening tools on there, self-screening tools, yes.
Self-screening.
The problem again is their pride in acknowledging that they have a problem and going to speak to somebody face to face, especially someone that knows everybody else in the same organization. That is a very big barrier. Anonymity is huge. And the study is showing that there's more and more people, so when we talk about the VA, who are going to their phones and using technology to reach out versus actually going to see someone.
So, Chief, you said how many city firemen went for peer support training?
I'd have to check with President Samuel from the E-Board. I'm pretty sure it was last September or October, and there might have been 8 to 10 or 12.
Okay, so if I'm at Engine 10, and that's where I'm stationed, and the captain of Engine 10 is the one that went for the training, I work under him. Do you really think I'm going to go ask him for help?
Yeah, and I get that point, but they've put out to their membership who all the peers are. So and I think their goal was, I can't speak for them, but I think their goal was to have enough across the different shifts, across different ranks, so that you would feel comfortable with calling somebody. And I just want to reiterate that that's not all this app does. This is something, And listen, there's an old adage in the fire department, and I know that these peer support people that went to the training are phenomenal people, and they will connect our people with the right people. But in the fire service, there's 3 ways to get a message out: telegraph, telephone, and tell a firefighter. All right, so, and that's a real concern that these other firefighters will have. Hey, if I tell somebody something in confidence, is it gonna get out? I work with these people every day. Are they gonna look at me different? You know, this removes that barrier. I think the peer support team is a great starting point, and it's a needed asset, and I'm glad the local went and did that. And I'm glad they're as passionate about it as I am, but it's not one solution here. It's just not. It's got to be a multifaceted, multi-pronged approach to make sure that we're taking care of the people that take care of us every day.
Have you been able to find out, I know you mentioned earlier that you think Wilkes-Barre also used the app for their personnel, so do you know how it went over there? Is there any information you have on that?
So when I initially reached out to them, it was early in the implementation, I believe, so they didn't have a lot of information yet. They implemented it, and I believe it started with police, if I remember correctly, and I think the fire has it as well, but I'm not 100% sure. But I think they were very early into it as well, so they wouldn't have a lot of data flushed out yet.
So we have no data collected so far on were there any requests. Does that get reported by our peer supporters? Are any requests get reported, or is it's not? Nothing is recorded.
Nothing comes through the city, and that's the part of the peer support. It makes good sense, right?
Well,
you're not going to.
Except if I talk to somebody I don't like,
Yeah.
and they decide to tell everybody else.
Right. No, there hasn't been. The folks doing it are great people, and I'm glad that they stepped up. So, and they have reached out to some, but we don't get that reporting data, nor would the city want that reporting data, because then people wouldn't report. And that's another reason why we're trying to make sure that they can be anonymous and they can get help.
So I appreciate both you gentlemen coming to caucus and explaining the rationale to us and the folks sitting behind you. Did you do the same with both union bodies? Did you sit down with them and say, hey, of course we love the peer support program, but we'd like to also offer supplemental support in the form of an app? Did you have these discussions with your officers and firefighters?
This was actually brought up through the chain of command. This came from internal. So what's important to realize is that this is not a mandate. This is a lifeline. This is a tool for them to use, a resource that's available to them. We're not forcing this upon anyone. This is an option that they have to use. Once this app is approved, the vendor will do some education and awareness training for the entire agency, and we promote that and the importance of the app and the purpose for it. It is not a mandate. There's no negotiating or agreements necessary. It is here for you to use if you so choose to use it.
No, I understand it's not mandatory. My question is, did you throw this around with the guys? Like you're explaining to us, did you say, hey, we have this other alternate resource for your health and welfare? What do you think? Did you
Actually, yes. On the police department, on the police department side, they're looking forward to it. And this is actually, it's taken longer than anticipated to get it underway. And I have been asked again and again when it would be coming. So I keep reassuring them that it will be here. Hopefully with the funding made available, we will have that ability to get it across, but it is eagerly awaited.
From the fire department side, we may have talked about it in passing, but it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal. It's not a replacement for the peer support. It's another resource for our members. And listen, we don't talk about when we're going to put Plime events on the fire trucks with the union, or if we're going to get rid of PFAS foams with the union. This is health and safety stuff that's our responsibility here in the city to push forward. So there were some passing conversations, but never any pushback on it, because we would talk about They were going for the peer support training. Could their counselor come and ride along on the apparatus and do it on all 3 shifts? Yes. She signed the form, spent the day with the chief, took around to all the fire stations. So it was never thought that this was going to be met with resistance, which is what it kind of feels like at this point. This is about doing right by the members and all of the members, not just a select few who may have imparted their opinion to you on what this app is about. But yeah, there's been some conversations, but nothing where they said, oh, I don't think that's a good idea, we shouldn't do this. And that's why I was surprised to hear that it was tabled last week.
I have one more question, but before I do, I just want to say, I really do appreciate you coming in, and even though I know you said we could call you and ask these questions as well, I think this is a really important conversation for us to have, and to even, be discussing the mental health for our firefighters and police officers, I think is a great thing, and figuring out what programs are out there and what avenues we could have as a city to help address those issues. So I think the only other question I had with regards to the app, I want to know if it then directed them to counselors. I know you said resources, but we didn't discuss what options there were for one-on-one counseling. It's clear that's not what this is meant to be, even though there are apps out there that do that. So how do they get directed to counseling assistance? Oh, and I think I had one more thing, sorry. And speaking of counselors, for the peer-to-peer support, I know that you said it was at no cost to the city. So is the counselor that goes on ride-alongs with them, are they donating their time, or will there be costs in the future associated with that?
I think it's important to kind of separate the two things here, because that peer-to-peer support that we're talking about on the fire department side has been implemented by the local, the union. So I think that she's donating her time, but if there's a fee associated with it, it's probably being picked up by the local. But I would have to ask President Samuel, and I don't know if I would want to ask him that. I think that's more his business, but there's no cost to the city. But we can't rely on the bargaining unit to make sure that our personnel are healthy and well. That's a responsibility of Chief Carroll, myself, the mayor, all of you, the HR director. That's our job, to make sure that they reach a long, healthy, and enjoyable retirement. And anything that we can do to ensure that, as long as it's well-based, and I think that this is, I think that we need to be moving in that direction.
And then about the other,
the
counseling options, are they these are, the counselors in your area who specialize in this training who could help you?
Yes, so the app developer will make that customizable. If the city wanted to put preferred people on there that are within our health network, they can do that. So it is customizable for them to be able to, for us to be able to put those resources on there, those direct contacts in the area.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Last question on the peer-to-peer. Now, the peer-to-peer teams, they work with other peer-to-peer teams and other departments, correct? Outside of the city of Scranton?
They can, yeah. And I think even before this team got up and running, there might have been an event that happened here where they had brought some in from outside the area. And from my position, once again, anything that I could do to support them, we've done. And yes, whenever that question's asked, whatever we need to do. And we do the same thing as the chief does. When we have significant incidents, we do critical incident stress debriefing. We do all that counseling. We used to use somebody from the county to point them in that direction. But this now gives them kind of a direction that they can choose and a path that they can play out without having that stigma that's typically and historically been associated with both police, fire, EMS, and the military.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming and providing us with the rationale and a better explanation than we had in the resolution itself that was pretty vague. So with that said, I mean, we're not going to continue our caucus. We'll take a brief 5-minute break, and then we'll start our regular meeting. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you.